Shortly after the survival and elimination special exam, the student-teacher interviews begin. With a knock on the door, Ayanokoji enters inside, to Chabashira asking if he has any complaints about the school. Ayanokoji does not. She tries coaxing out an answer, but is instead told that she's changed. Admitting she's become more honest, they move on to discussing his future, and learns Ayanokoji is planning to do whatever his family chooses. Of course, family is important, but Chabashira wants to know his personal wishes, prompting Ayanokoji to declare he doesn't have any, let alone the right to decide his own future. Well, due to this, they'll wait to narrow down the specifics at the parent-teacher meeting, and Ayanokoji is shocked to learn his father will be attending. It turns out Mr. Ayanokoji contacted Chabashira directly, though he does want to be informed if there's a schedule change among any of the parent-teacher meetings. Finding this unexpected and odd, Ayanokoji takes a moment to look through the planned time for each and every meeting. Then noticing his discontent, Chabashira states there's nothing wrong with being nervous, and she reassures him that all parents love their children. Returning to his dorm, Ayanokoji finds Hashimoto waiting to speak with him. Noticing they're being watched, they step inside, where Hashimoto brings up Kamaro's expulsion, and how Class A is suspecting him of being the traitor. Needing to hurry this up for Kei's sake, Ayanokoji straight up asks why Hashimoto chose to betray Sakayanagi. You come to find out, he did it in an attempt to force Sakayanagi to recruit Ayanokoji into Class A, because he believes Ayanokoji is strong enough to single-handedly overturn the class rankings. The thing is though, Ayanokoji never promised he'd actually switch classes. However, he does state that Hashimoto's actions are not entirely wrong, since Class A may continue declining. To be realistic though, Hashimoto has a very slim chance of defeating Sakayanagi, though it's not like he's dumb enough to betray the class without a proper plan. With our conversation concluded, our duo heads to the convenience store, but is ambushed by Morishita in the lobby. Openly hostile toward this potential traitor, she wonders what they could have been talking about. Dodging the question, and more harassment, the boys end up being accompanied by Morishita to the store. Though the situation does make Ayanokoji wonder whether or not Hashimoto wanted to be spotted with him. Now at the store, they stumble upon Yamamura, which was in fact the person watching them outside his dorm room. Then it's only a moment later that they bump into an upperclassman, who promises to remember each of her Koheis before leaving. Sometime later, 9 buses arrive in preparation for the mixed training camp, yet only a single bus is being used for the 3rd years. It's while en route that Chabashira explains that this year's mixed training camp is not a special exam. The duration will be 4 days, and only has a minimal amount of private points as the reward. However, these points are restricted to only being spent at the mall and cannot be transferred to other people. There is a total of 20 groups, each which will have a single 3rd year as the leader. Handouts with the group assignments are passed around, and you come to find out 6 students are not attending due to illness. This includes Ichinose and Ishigami. Kei really wishes she was in Ayanokoji's group. However, she's relieved to not be with Ichinose, as she worries Ayanokoji might fall for her. Successfully ignoring that remark, Ayanokoji finds himself to be in Kiryu's group, just as someone exclaims these groups are not balanced at all. Especially Nagamo's, which contains strong people such as Horikita, Harada, Katsuragi, and Amasawa. Now, Chabashira straight up admits that groups are unbalanced, however that doesn't guarantee the stronger team's victory, because this camp is a round-robin tournament, with randomly chosen games. In total, there will be 19 games, where the leader will choose 5 members to participate in 1v1 showdowns. These games range from archery to cards to flower pressing, meaning sometimes luck will be more important than skill. You're even allowed to practice these events outside of the official games, and Ayanokoji is genuinely excited to try out all these new activities. On top of all this, there's even participation rewards, meant to encourage the students to try each activity. Upon arrival, they immediately separate into their groups, and Hashimoto is very happy to be with Ayanokoji. Hiyori is excited as well, prompting Hashimoto to state her and Ayanokoji look really good together. Due to Kiryu's lack of interest, Hashimoto takes the lead, but notices they're missing someone. Never mind, he just accidentally overlooked Yamamura. Kiryu then departs for lunch, gladly leaving the group in Hashimoto's hands. In the background, Koenji struts off on his own, just before his group member Inagashira meets eyes with Ayanokoji. Unexpectedly receiving a message, Ayanokoji is forced to excuse himself. It turns out the former student council president is upset that this training camp isn't a special exam, and Asahina explains it's due to the 3rd years being busy preparing for graduation. Then just as Ayanokoji suspected, the 3rd years in attendance all volunteered to be here. Next you find out that Nagamo and Asahina are going to attend different colleges, yet neither person is planning to use their Class A privilege. It's also worth noting that Nagumo is going to the same school as Manabu Horikita, and he even invites Ayanokoji to follow as well. Now, the reason for this meetup is that Nagumo is looking to turn this mixed training camp into a bet. If Ayanokoji wins, he will be rewarded with private points, but if he loses, there will be no consequence. The rules are as follows: Ayanokoji must participate in all 19 official games, and he must win at least 17 of the 19 matchups. Asahina declares it's unfair since card games are largely based on luck, but it's pointed out there's no penalty for losing. Ayanokoji then proclaims that Nagumo purposely made the groups unbalanced, but what can he say? As a former student council president, he has to do whatever he can to win. Entering inside, Kiryan apologizes for being late, and explains she picked her group members to be people Ayanokoji is most comfortable with. After a brief back and forth, Kiryan leaves, followed by Amasawa forcing her way inside. Apparently, Nagumo had ordered her to wait elsewhere, and admits he only chose her because she somehow knew about this mixed training camp ahead of time. Speaking of time, Asahina rushes out for her next game, followed by Amasawa wondering if Nagumo likes Asahina, but that's denied before he leaves. Since they're alone, Ayanokoji is able to verify that Amasawa and Yagami were both given the school's yearly schedule before enrolling. You also learn that she got herself onto Nagumo's team with the hopes of being able to compete directly against Ayanokoji. Being concerned that his constant participation might cause an issue, Ayanokoji willingly informs Hashimoto of this bet. Now, in regard to the reward, Ayanokoji offers to share it with the group, but Hashimoto thinks he deserves a larger cut than the others, due to him being the impromptu leader. The first official match is flower pressing, and Nanase notices Ayanokoji is the only boy competing. Of course, this is his first time trying this activity, though with some pointers from Hiyori, he does manage to win. Kiryan congratulates his victory, though they're interrupted by a troubled Inugashira. It turns out her group leader, Tatabayashi, has angrily ordered her to retrieve Koenji, and she thought Ayanokoji was his friend, thus could help. Knowing this task to be literally impossible, Ayanokoji declines, but Kiryan manages to talk him into at least trying. After a bit of searching, Koenji is found mid-workout. Inugashira's situation is brought up, but as expected, Koenji doesn't care at all. Ayanokoji openly states he'll never understand this guy, followed by Koenji asking which of them would do better on an exam. Of course, Ayanokoji believes himself. Koenji then asks what if they fought, and is told it'd depend on the rules, but Koenji might actually have an advantage. In order to determine which of them is truly superior, you need to numerically break down many different variables, but Koenji loudly disagrees. To him it's simple, Koenji is a perfect being, and thus superior to literally everyone. In the same way that Ayanokoji wouldn't compete against children, Koenji won't compete against all these obviously inferior students. Upon hearing this, Ayanokoji declares that Koenji doesn't belong at this school, and it turns out his original plan was to go train in China once again, but it didn't work out. It's then revealed that Ayanokoji is preparing to leave the class, and is thus trying to set up Horikita to be able to survive on her own. To this end, Ayanokoji is even challenged to try expelling Koenji, but he has no intention of doing so. Reporting back to his leader, he finds Kiryan happily chatting about her future with Asahina. Apparently, she once looked up to a certain politician named Kijima, but for now, she just wants to live a completely normal life. Maybe Ayanokoji will become a politician in her place, but that's swiftly shot down. The rest of today's games arrive, with the results being as follows, with Ayanokoji managing to win every matchup. With evening approaching, the group happily gathers in their room with an undefeated record. Surprisingly, Sakayanagi nor Ryun's group is taking the competition seriously, which only adds to Hashimoto's anxiety. This prompts him to have Ayanokoji investigate, and he reluctantly agrees, but isn't promising any results. Moving into the lobby, he finds Sanada, who immediately asks about Hashimoto. The conversation then turns to Sakayanagi, though she's apparently been acting perfectly normal. Just after this, Horikita pulls Ayanokoji off to the side, wondering if he's aware of Amasawa's martial arts skills, and that she wants Ayanokoji to train her in preparation for a rematch with Amasawa. He tries, pointing her toward Ibuki, but said person reveals herself and that they've already tapped the limits of sparring against one another. Surprisingly, Ayanokoji agrees to training both of them, but has some conditions. The first of which being that Amasawa must agree to holding the rematch on the final day of the mixed training camp. Accepting this, Horikita urges him to continue, but he won't explain further until condition 1 has been met. To this end, they all agree to meet up the following morning, and just before departing, Ayanokoji asks Horikita to look into something for him. Later that night, after a bath, the boys happen upon Tatabayashi angrily confronting Koenji, who simply pushes past him to lay down. This conversation about cooperating with the group goes just as you'd expect, prompting Hashimoto to cut in, attempting to calm the third year down. Early the following morning, Ayano Koji confirms that Amasawa agreed to have the rematch on the final day. She did, however, ask to have it one day prior, which Horikita suspects might be due to feminine reasons, but Ayano Koji refuses to budge. The second condition is as follows: if the girls deem themselves outmatched, they must fight together in a 2 vs 1. Horikita exclaims Ayano Koji thinks they'll lose, prompting him to admit that he does have a decent grasp of Amasawa's abilities. A pissed off Ibuki refuses, and playing along with her antics, Ayano Koji draws a circle around himself, declaring he'll only use one hand. A powerful kick is dodged, followed by Ibuki latching onto his wrist. Skillfully stepping in, Ayano Koji reverses their positions before gently punching her back. Switching positions, but unlike the previous idiot, Horikita aims to grab his elbow. Ayano Koji pulls away, forcing her to grab his wrist, followed by the same events as before. Now realizing the vast difference in power, they're forced to accept his second condition of fighting together. After finishing training and bathing with his group, he attends breakfast where Morishita finds it creepy that the first years are praising Ayano Koji. On the flip side, Hiyori finds it cute, while Kiryu is curious how he tamed them so fast. The funny thing is, Ayano Koji genuinely has no idea, but Hashimoto comes to his rescue, declaring it to be a secret among men, due to Ayano Koji having that. In the lobby, we stumble upon Sakai Hanagi, where Ayano Koji states that Hashimoto is surprised she's not trying to win. Now aware that Ayano Koji was sent to spy on her, they discuss how she still needs to find a replacement for Kamuro. Kito is offered up as an option, but she'd much prefer choosing a woman. Said protector then arrives, followed by Amasawa entering the room, taunting Sakai Hanagi about her group's 3 losses. Happily declaring she's ready to accept a challenge anytime, causes Amasawa to bring up Class A's defeat in the previous special exam. Playfully reaching out, Kito restrains her wrist and isn't buying into her weak, innocent girl act. Enjoying the nightly performance, Amasawa takes her leave, promising to play with Sakai Hanagi in the future. The first match of the day is sculpture carving, with Kushida on the opposing team. We learn that her group agreed to just relax at this camp, though due to her kind nature, she keeps being asked to compete in the majority of their matches. Ayano Koji warns her not to explode, but he has no need to worry, as she's been using Horikita and Ibuki as stress relief. So the result of the 6th through 12th matches are such, and it's worth noting that Ayano Koji lost not once but twice, meaning any more losses will result in him losing the bet against Nagamo. I want to pause to mention that the book really does skim over most of these matches. It only ever stops to emphasize that Ayano Koji is thoroughly enjoying each and every new experience. In the evening, Ayano Koji bumps into Sanada once again, who states he's glad that Hashimoto, Yamamura, and Morishita are all in a group with Ayano Koji. It turns out he's noticed how Sakai Hanagi seems to treat Ayano Koji special, then due to Morishita being, well, unique, he tends to worry about her. Dinner comes and goes, followed by Takedo receiving a message from Ishizaki. Arriving to the location, he's slammed into the wall as Ryun knows that he's been talking with Sakai Hanagi. Takedo claims it was nothing, he just wanted to cheer her up since her closest friend was expelled. Heck, if he has the hots for Sakai Hanagi that bad, Ryun's willing to help force the experience. Raging and breaking free, a kick slams, followed by a punch in his legs giving out. Being physically held up, Takedo threatens to continue disobeying, which causes Ryun to take a step back, welcoming a fight. Filled with rage, Takedo throws the first punch. Hosen interrupts, followed by Takedo being slammed into the wall once again. Ryun orders the brute to leave. Ishizaki attempts to force him out, but of course that's not happening. Albert steps forward. Hosen deems Ryun a coward, just as Utomiya tries to politely defuse the situation. Literally laying his hands on Ryun, he states they need Takedo for their group's matches, but Ryun wonders if they can really stop him. Utomiya readies his fists. Hosen shouts that's his prey, and Ryun is very happy some aggressive people have come to the school. Albert blocks a heavy punch from Hosen, just as a crowd arrives, ending this confrontation. Without delay, Utomiya begins to smooth things over, allowing Ryun, Albert, and Ishizaki to leave. Though once they're gone, Albert declares Hosen to be as strong as or stronger than Ayano Koji, granted that's only in terms of raw physical strength. Arriving to the girls' room as instructed, it's obvious they're less than enthused about having the boys here. Ayano Koji pulls out a deck of cards, stating a blonde senpai told him it's the staple of training camps. Morishita is excited to start a game of Old Maid, though apparently she's never played before. This revelation shocks the group, since Morishita rated herself extremely confident with card games, though apparently Kiryu already suspected as much and planned accordingly. Ayano Koji invites Yamamura to join, but she adamantly refuses. But after the first 3 games conclude, Hiyori politely forces Yamamura in, though everyone keeps accidentally skipping over her and saying her name wrong. It's while on the way back to their own room that Hashimoto stops Ayanokoji, asking what info he discovered about Sakayanagi. He claims not to have learned anything, followed by Hashimoto pointing out that Ryun has also been consistently losing. This has caused Hashimoto to grow increasingly paranoid. However, Ayanokoji assumes Sakayanagi is just taking time to recover, while Ryun isn't interested in the restricted reward. On the morning of the third day, Ibuki demands for Ayanokoji to fight blindfolded, but then has to rush to the bathroom. While she's gone, they discuss how some students have very little presence, and that Ayanokoji has drastically changed over the past 2 years. Horikita also gives Ayanokoji the information he asked for. With a shout, Ibuki attacks from behind. It's dodged, and she's reprimanded for yelling out her attack, just like Ishizaki. That comment is the proof Horikita needed to be sure that Ayanokoji once fought Ishizaki and Ryun. With a look toward Ibuki, she smugly proclaims he never asked her to keep it a secret, followed by Horikita declaring she's very suspicious of the Yagami incident as well, though Ayanokoji points out he didn't use force against Yagami. The next match is set to be shogi, but their best player Morishita is currently missing. Our two guys begin searching, and it's Ayanokoji that finds her quietly touching a tree. Calling out, he's told to hush, as she needs to focus in order to hear the voice of the forest. Following her lead, he touches the tree, closes his eyes, and goes quiet. But upon opening them, he finds Morishita recording and making fun of him. After calming down, she states that she thinks Class A should expel Hashimoto. Ayanokoji won't give an opinion since it's not his class, but he does make it clear that he's not supporting Hashimoto, and that he believes Sakayanagi will win this conflict 9 out of 10 times. He's genuinely thanked for his thoughts, and you find out Morishita highly values his opinion. The 17th match turns out to be archery against Nagamo's group, which pits Ayanokoji against Amasawa, who shoots first, scoring an impressive 57 points. Now, Ayanokoji's first arrow hits the 8, meaning his next 5 need to be perfect. Thus, the archery contest concludes, with Ayanokoji scoring 58 points. With a few more games, the tournament comes to a close, with Kiryu's group coming in 4th, with 15 wins and 4 losses. As expected, Nagamo's group won with 18 wins and 1 loss, which was only in a luck-based card game. Now in regard to Ayanokoji's personal record, he ended at 17-2, meaning he won the bet against the former student council president. Nagamo wonders if Ayanokoji's group could have won if he was the leader, but he honestly doesn't think he could have, and Ayanokoji wishes to know if Nagamo is finally satisfied. Of course, this indirect match didn't satisfy him, but even so, he doesn't hesitate to send over the reward. Lastly, Nagamo invites Ayanokoji to follow him to college, that way they can interact more, and before leaving, Ayanokoji gives Nagamo a message to pass on to someone. Later that night, just before closing his eyes, Ayanokoji receives a message from Hiyori. It turns out Yamamura has gone missing, so he urges her to stay in the room, as he will go to search. He spots his target just as expected, hiding next to a vending machine. His words startle her, and you come to find out she's wanting to be alone, and that the hum of the vending machine helps calm her anxieties. However, today, it doesn't seem to be working, and after a long bit of coaxing, it's revealed that Yamamura is still hung up on the previous special exam. If you remember, when it came time to expel someone, Sakayanagi did it via lottery, but Yamamura was too scared to draw. At that moment, she felt as if Sakayanagi wanted her to be the one expelled, so now she feels useless and unwanted. Ayanokoji admits that Kamuro might have been valued more than her, but in no way does that make Yamamura useless. The issue is that she's too afraid to discuss this with Sakayanagi directly, and it doesn't help that she saw what happened to Takedo. On top of clearing up her own doubts, Yamamura really doesn't want to see Sakayanagi lose again, and all Ayanokoji can do is encourage her to talk it out. But what if Sakayanagi refuses to speak with her? Well, in that situation, Ayanokoji will gladly listen to her worries once again. It's 1 AM in the cafeteria, as Amasawa greets Nagamo's arrival. He exclaims he'd never refuse a woman's call, though that attitude only pisses her off. You see, Amasawa arranged this meeting by threatening to beat up Asahina, but now that Nagamo's here, she's planning to injure him instead. This will surely result in her being expelled, however she doesn't mind, plus being beat up by a girl will seriously hurt Nagamo's reputation. It turns out Amasawa's motivation behind this is revenge for Yagami's expulsion. Nagamo points out that was Ayanokoji's doing, but she's well aware she can't beat Ayanokoji, nor does she want to hinder his plans. Seemingly out of nowhere, Nagamo begins ranting about his experience at the school, and how he wasn't able to make as much of an impact as Manabu or Ayanokoji. Afterwards, Nagamo reveals he brought a gift. Amasawa will likely throw it away, followed by him recounting Ayanokoji's message.
You still have value. Don't waste it.
Very annoyed that Ayanokoji correctly predicted all of this, yet finally feeling satisfied. Nagumo warns her not to catch a cold before walking away. Waking up at 6 a.m. to a lingering message from Nagumo, he's approached by Tsubaki, who wants to take a walk outside. Out of the blue, Tsubaki wants to know how Ayanokoji would react if he found out that he had a brother he never knew about. For him, it would depend on a lot of different factors, and Tsubaki agrees with his uncertainty. That being said though, if her hypothetical new sister had a sad past, then she'd definitely want to get to know her. Following this up, she begins a story, but they're interrupted as 3 other students arrive. You come to find out Ibuki was tricked into leaking their upcoming fight to Kushida, and since she doesn't like any of the 3 fighters, it will be a treat to watch no matter who gets beat up. Next, the group discusses Ayanokoji's growing popularity with girls, and Ibuki can't believe anyone would find him attractive. Looking to Kushida for reassurance, she's let down, as Kushida meekly states Ayanokoji doesn't have much competition at this school, so she can see how some girls might fall for him. The question is then posed, does Ibuki prefer Rion or Ayanokoji? But with words as sharp as a knife, they're both deemed shit options. After a brief warm-up, Horikita thanks him for the training, and you find out Ayanokoji isn't coming to watch, as his presence might cause issues. Instead, he makes his way to the park for his next meeting, where he almost immediately calls Sakayanagi out for purposely avoiding Yamamura, before mentioning it's as if there's a few students still mentally stuck in that previous special exam. The only way to escape the previous exam is for Sakayanagi to speak with Yamamura directly, causing her to weakly mutter that he wasn't supposed to interfere. Revealing Sakayanagi is 10 minutes late for an outdoor meeting with Yamamura that she didn't know about. Sakayanagi complains, but has no choice but to go. She does run into a problem, since her legs are refusing to move, but Ayanokoji grabs her hand, pulling her along. It's only when within sight of Yamamura that he gently shoves Sakayanagi forward. With the mixed training camp over, life returns to normal, and today, Ayanokoji is taking a walk early in the morning. In regard to the K issue, he just needs to proceed as planned, but he recognizes he may need to step in to help Ichinose struggling class. Upon arrival, Horikita is already waiting for him, as she just wants to have a friendly, non-exam focused chat. Though it only takes but a moment for the conversation to turn serious, as they discuss the possibility of upcoming expulsions during the final. To Horikita's surprise, Ayanokoji actually volunteers himself to help the class any way he can. You also learn that Ibuki and Horikita lost the fight against Amasawa, though they did land a few good hits in the start, but she quickly realized Ayanokoji had been training them. Due to this, Horikita wants to know Ayanokoji's relationship to Amasawa. He deems her an ex-girlfriend, though Horikita doesn't find that joke amusing. She just earnestly hopes that one day, Ayanokoji will be willing to tell her the truth. Jumping back in time, to Hashimoto and Ayanokoji's meeting before the mixed training camp. Hashimoto reveals he's been thinking about transferring to Rion's class for a while. A secret bet between Sakayanagi and Rion is brought up, though Ayanokoji doesn't know the details, only that it was formed on the uninhabited island. Apparently, Rion gained a lot of private points from this bet, and you find out Hashimoto believes Rion versus Sakayanagi to be an even match. To him, Ayanokoji will be the deciding factor in that battle, and it's this belief that caused him to betray Class A, due to Sakayanagi's refusal to recruit Ayanokoji. Does that mean Rion is willing to recruit him? Well, at first he refused, but then said he'd recruit both Ayanokoji and Hashimoto after he defeats Sakayanagi during the finals. However, Ayanokoji is well aware Hashimoto isn't telling the full truth, as he only ever acts in favor of himself. Then finally getting to the point, Ayanokoji asks what it is Hashimoto wants, and with a nervous smile, Hashimoto. In the present, Rion and Sakagami-sensei enter into the room. Neither teacher knows why they're here, as the students begin discussing Hashimoto's betrayal and Sakayanagi's recent loss. It takes only a moment for Rion to realize that Ayanokoji stepped in to save Sakayanagi, and he openly admits Ayanokoji did the same thing for him. They both share the same goal of wanting to defeat Ayanokoji, which means they each wish to remove all other obstacles as soon as possible. Mashima urges them to get to the point, and learns today they're going to make a bet with their teachers as witnesses. It's very simple, since Sakayanagi and Rion are slated to battle against each other during the finals. The bet will force the loser to leave this school. Mashima exclaims the rules for the final have not been revealed, so you can't even be sure expulsion is part of it. But Sakayanagi declares that doesn't matter, as their bet will force the loser to voluntarily drop out. Obviously, this makes her protection point meaningless, and Rion explains that in the event of a tie, they'll use a lottery to determine the loser. So, if you guys enjoy reading Classroom of the Elite, then check this out. A book titled High School Syndrome was just published in December. The author reached out to me and let me try it for free, and let me tell ya, it's very similar to Classroom of the Elite. If you want, go check it out on Amazon, where it even has a decent sized preview that you can read before buying. Then of course, I can't forget my newest patrons, Super Gamer Q, Connor Brown, Master Guardian, and TT. Thank you so much for going above and beyond to support the channel.